The sun was setting over the barren hills of an alien planet, casting long shadows across the cracked and desolate landscape. The air smelled metallic, like burnt copper mixed with something faintly sweet that tickled the back of my throat. I stood there, staring at the towering figure before me, a woman who seemed to embody every possible contradiction. Strength and grace, beauty and menace, familiarity and complete otherworldliness. She wasn't human, not by any stretch of the imagination. Her skin shimmered as though it had been painted with liquid gold, catching even the dim light of this distant star's twilight in a way that made her look almost ethereal. Her eyes glowed faintly, shifting colors like a kaleidoscope. Blue one moment, green the next, then violet, and they pierced through me with unnerving intensity. She wore armor that looked like it belonged in some ancient mythological tale, sleek but ornate, its surface etched with glowing runes that pulsed softly with energy. And yet, despite all these alien traits, there was something about her posture, her expression, that felt oddly relatable. Maybe it was the way she tilted her head slightly when she spoke, or how her lips curved upward ever so subtly when amused. It gave her an aura of humanity amidst her otherwise extraterrestrial presence. I hadn't meant for things to go this far. One minute, I'd been fumbling around trying to explain myself after accidentally stepping into what appeared to be their version of a war council chamber, and the next thing I knew, I blurted out the first word that came to mind. "Lovely?" I said, my voice cracking under pressure. Her reaction caught me completely off guard. For someone who exuded such commanding authority, she froze for just a fraction of a second too long. Then, slowly, very deliberately, her cheeks darkened. Not quite red, more like a warm bronze flush spreading across her face. She blinked once, twice, before narrowing those mesmerizing eyes on me. "Say that again," she demanded, her tone low but firm, carrying both curiosity and challenge. My stomach flipped. Did she really want me to repeat myself? Or was this some sort of test designed to humiliate the clumsy intruder? Before I could decide whether to comply or beg for mercy, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. Red lights flashed overhead, bathing everything, including her golden form, in ominous crimson hues. Whatever fragile connection we'd briefly established shattered instantly as guards rushed in from every direction, weapons drawn. They surrounded us in seconds, shouting orders in languages I couldn't begin to comprehend. Through the chaos, however, her gaze never left mine. If anything, it intensified, her glowing eyes locking onto me like twin stars refusing to let go. Despite the danger swirling around us, part of me couldn't help but marvel at how striking she looked in that moment. Unflinching, regal, utterly untouchable. But beneath that exterior, I sensed something else. Vulnerability, maybe even intrigue. That single slip-up, calling her lovely, had shifted something between us, though neither of us fully understood what yet. The room erupted into controlled chaos as the guards formed a tight circle around us, their weapons humming with latent power. Each movement they made was precise, practiced, betraying years of military discipline honed to perfection. Yet despite the obvious threat, the commander didn't flinch. Instead, she raised a hand. A simple gesture that somehow silenced the cacophony almost immediately. The soldiers froze mid-step, their glowing weapons lowering fractionally but still trained on me. "Lovely?" she repeated, her voice slicing through the sudden quiet like a blade. There was no mockery in her tone, only a sharp edge of curiosity laced with something deeper I couldn't quite name. Her glowing eyes narrowed further, studying me as though I were some strange artifact unearthed from another dimension. "You dare call me lovely?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry despite the humid alien air pressing against my skin. It slipped," I stammered, raising my hands defensively. "I didn't mean." "Mean what?" she interrupted, taking a step closer. Her boots clicked against the metallic floor, each sound reverberating through the tense silence. Every movement she made radiated authority, and yet there was something undeniably personal about the way she leaned toward me now. "Do you think addressing your captor with such casualness will save you, human?" "No," I exclaimed quickly, perhaps too quickly. "I mean, I'm sorry. It was stupid. A mistake." Her lips twitched, just barely, but it was enough to make my pulse race. Was she amused? Irritated? Trying not to laugh outright? Before I could decipher her expression, one of the guards stepped forward, his weapon aimed squarely at my chest. "Commander Silra," he barked, his voice deep and gravelly. "This intruder breached our perimeter without clearance. Protocol dictates immediate detainment or termination if deemed hostile. Silra. So that was her name. It suited her, I thought fleetingly, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the way it rolled off the tongue, sharp yet melodic, much like her presence. She turned her head slightly to glance at him, her glowing eyes flickering with irritation before returning to me. I am aware of protocol, Lieutenant Vane, she snapped, her tone leaving no room for argument. But this situation is unique. She paused, tilting her head ever so slightly as though weighing her options. Then, without warning, she reached out and grabbed my wrist. Not roughly, but firmly enough to leave no doubt about her intentions. Take him to the holding bay, she ordered, pulling me along with surprising ease despite my attempts to resist. He belongs to me now. The murmurs among the guards were immediate and hushed, filled with disbelief and thinly veiled disapproval. I caught snippets of their conversation, fragments of words that sounded harsh and guttural even though I couldn't understand them. Clearly, whatever bond or misunderstanding had formed between Silra and me was already causing ripples within her ranks. As we moved through the labyrinthine corridors of their massive ship, I struggled to keep up with her brisk pace while simultaneously trying to process what had just happened. Why had she claimed me? What did she mean by saying I belonged to her? And most importantly, why hadn't she killed me yet? These questions swirled in my mind like a storm, each more bewildering than the last. When we finally reached the holding bay, a sleek, sterile room lined with transparent cells glowing faintly blue, she shoved me inside one of them with surprising gentleness. The door slid shut behind me with a soft hiss, sealing me inside. For a moment, we simply stared at each other through the barrier, neither speaking nor moving. Then, with a wry smile that sent chills down my spine, she said softly, "Human, you have no idea what you've started." And with that, she turned on her heel and walked away, leaving me alone with nothing but my racing thoughts and the lingering echo of her words. Hours passed, or maybe it was days. Time felt elastic here, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow seemed alive, every corner brimming with unseen eyes. The cell itself wasn't uncomfortable. There was a cot, a small basin of water that shimmered faintly, likely purified using some advanced technology, and even a ventilation system that kept the air breathable. But none of that mattered because my mind refused to rest. All I could think about was Silra, the way her glowing eyes had locked onto mine, the way her voice carried weight and mystery, and the way she had claimed me as though I were some kind of prize. Just when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me, the door to the holding bay slid open with a pneumatic hiss. In strode Lieutenant Vane, flanked by two other guards whose expressions were unreadable behind their helmets. Their weapons weren't drawn, but their stances screamed readiness for conflict. Vane stopped just outside my cell, his arms crossed over his armored chest as he peered at me through the translucent barrier. "So, this is the human," he muttered, almost disdainfully. His voice carried an edge of derision, like I was some troublesome insect rather than a sentient being. "The one Commander Silra insists on protecting." Protection. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. Is that what she thought she was doing? Protecting me? From what? Or whom? My confusion must have shown on my face because Vane's lip curled into a sneer. He tapped the side of the cell with one gloved finger, drawing my attention back to him. "Your trouble," he continued, leaning closer until his face was mere inches from the barrier. "No one breaches our vessel and walks away unscathed. No one insults our commander and lives to tell the tale." His glowing eyes bore into mine, and for a split second, I wondered if he planned to finish what protocol dictated earlier, that termination order. But before I could respond or panic further, a familiar voice cut through the tension like a blade. "That's enough, Vane." I turned my head sharply, heart hammering wildly. There she was, standing just inside the doorway, her golden form radiant even in the dim light of the holding bay. Her presence seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the room, leaving everyone, including me, momentarily breathless. Vane straightened immediately, snapping to attention as though an invisible string had yanked him upright. "Commander," he said stiffly, though there was a flicker of defiance in his tone. "I was merely ensuring the prisoner understands the gravity of his actions." "He understands plenty," Silra replied coolly, striding forward with deliberate steps. Her armor gleamed faintly, its runes pulsing in sync with her steady movements. When she reached the cell, she dismissed Vane and the others with a curt wave of her hand. "Leave us." Vane hesitated, clearly reluctant to obey, but a single glare from Silra silenced any protest he might have voiced. With a begrudging nod, he motioned for the others to follow him out. As soon as the doors closed behind them, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. It wasn't exactly relaxed, but the oppressive tension eased somewhat, replaced by something quieter, more intimate. Silra turned her full attention to me then, her glowing eyes scanning me from head to toe. "You've caused quite the stir," she said, her tone measured but tinged with amusement. "My crew isn't fond of outsiders, especially ones who wander into restricted areas and call their commander names. I told you, it was an accident," I blurted out, wincing inwardly at how defensive I sounded. "I didn't mean to insult you. Honest." To my surprise, she chuckled softly, the sound rich and melodic. "An accident," she echoed, tapping a finger against the barrier thoughtfully. "How fascinating. Most humans would cower in fear or lash out in anger. Yet you apologize. Repeatedly." "Well, yelling probably wouldn't do me much good right now," I muttered, gesturing vaguely at the cell. "Besides, I figure pissing you off further isn't exactly smart." Her lips quirked upward in a half-smile, and for a brief moment, she looked almost playful. "Smart indeed," she murmured. "Though I suspect there's more to you than meets the eye human. Tell me, what is your name?" For some reason, the question caught me off guard. Up until now, I'd been nothing more than the intruder or the prisoner. Hearing her ask for my name felt strangely significant, like she was acknowledging me as an individual rather than just a problem to solve. I hesitated, unsure whether revealing it was wise, but something in her gaze compelled me to answer. "It's Alex," I said finally, meeting her eyes. "Alex Carter." "Alex?" she repeated, testing the syllables as though they were foreign words. "A simple name. Human names often are." She tilted her head slightly, studying me with renewed interest. "And yet, you've managed to complicate matters considerably, Alex Carter. Do you know why?" "No," I admitted, shaking my head. "I don't even know where I am, or why I'm here. One minute I was exploring that moon, and the next—" "The moon?" she interrupted, her brows furrowing slightly. "What moon?" "The one near Proxima Centauri," I explained hastily, realizing too late how absurd it must sound. "I was part of a research team studying anomalies in the region. We found, well, ruins, I guess. Ancient tech buried under layers of rock. We thought it might be abandoned, but clearly—" I trailed off, gesturing weakly at the ship around us. Silra's expression shifted, growing darker, more contemplative. "Ruins?" she murmured, almost to herself. "So that's how you stumbled upon us. Curiosity led you to places you shouldn't have gone." "I didn't mean to trespass," I insisted, frustration creeping into my voice. "We didn't know anyone lived there. And now you do," she said sharply, cutting me off. There was an edge to her tone now, something harder and colder than before. "Now you know that this territory belongs to the Kalari Empire, and that unauthorized entry carries severe consequences." The Kalari Empire. The name sent a shiver down my spine. I'd heard rumors during my studies, whispers of a powerful civilization that ruled vast swathes of space with an iron grip. But those stories always seemed exaggerated, like tall tales spun by overly imaginative historians. Now, faced with the reality of it, and the fact that I'd unwittingly trespassed on their land, I realized just how naive I'd been. "What happens to me now?" I asked quietly, bracing myself for the worst. Silra studied me for a long moment, her glowing eyes unreadable. Then, without warning, she activated the control panel beside the cell, and the barrier dissolved into thin air. I stumbled back instinctively, startled by the sudden freedom. "For now," she said, stepping closer until we were nearly nose to nose. "You stay with me. You'll answer my questions, and trust me, there will be many. In return, I'll ensure your survival. Consider it a temporary truce." "A truce?" I echoed numbly, still reeling from the turn of events. "Why would you do that?" Her smile returned, enigmatic and faintly dangerous. "Because, Alex Carter, you intrigue me. And in my experience, intrigue is rarely something to ignore." With that cryptic statement hanging in the air, she turned and walked away, leaving me little choice but to follow. Following Silra through the labyrinthine corridors of the Kalari ship was like walking through a living organism. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent veins, casting an eerie glow that shifted colors depending on our proximity. Panels hummed with energy, and occasionally, Tendrils of vapor-like mist drifted lazily across the floor, disappearing into vents or cracks in the architecture. Everything about the place screamed advanced technology, yet there was an organic quality to it that defied logic. It was as if the ship itself was alive, breathing, watching. Silra led me silently, her gait confident and unhurried. Guards stationed along the way saluted her as we passed, their glowing weapons held at the ready but lowered respectfully in her presence. Some shot curious glances my way, their expressions ranging from outright hostility to guarded curiosity. Clearly, news of the human prisoner had spread quickly, and I couldn't help but feel like a specimen on display. Eventually, we arrived at what appeared to be her quarters. A grand chamber that looked less like a military base and more like a throne room plucked from some ancient alien dynasty. The ceiling soared high above us, adorned with intricate carvings that shimmered faintly in the dim light. A massive desk dominated the center of the space, its surface covered in holographic displays that flickered with streams of data written in symbols I couldn't decipher. Behind the desk stood a wide viewport, offering a breathtaking view of the cosmos beyond. Stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across black velvet, their light distorted slightly by the ship's protective shields. "Sit," Silra commanded, gesturing toward a chair positioned in front of the desk. Her tone left no room for argument, so I complied, sinking into the surprisingly comfortable seat. She circled around to take her place behind the desk, her armor clicking softly with each step. As she settled into her own chair, a throne-like construct that seemed to mold itself to her form, she fixed me with those piercing, glowing eyes. "Let's begin," she said, folding her hands neatly atop the desk. "Tell me everything. Your mission, your team, your purpose. Leave nothing out." For the next hour, or possibly longer, I recounted every detail I could remember. I told her about the research expedition, the discovery of the ruins, the strange energy readings that had drawn us to the site. I described the equipment we'd brought, the theories we'd discussed, the hopes we'd harbored of uncovering evidence of extraterrestrial life. Throughout it all, Silra listened intently, her expression unreadable but her eyes never wavering from mine. When I finished, she sat back in her chair, tapping one finger rhythmically against the armrest. "Fascinating," she murmured after a long pause. "You humans are relentless in your pursuit of knowledge. Foolish, perhaps, but relentless." "We didn't mean any harm," I said earnestly, leaning forward slightly. "We thought the ruins were abandoned. If we'd known." "You would have stayed away?" she interrupted, arching a delicate brow. "Doubtful. Humans rarely resist the allure of forbidden places, regardless of the risks." Her words stung, not because they were cruel but because they rang true. How many times had I ignored warnings during my career as a researcher? How often had I pushed boundaries, convinced that the potential rewards outweighed the dangers? It was easy to see why the Kalari viewed us as reckless interlopers. "But enough about your mistakes," Silra continued, dismissing the topic with a wave of her hand. "Let's discuss your future. You've seen too much, Alex Carter. Knowledge like yours cannot simply be erased." My stomach sank at the implication. "What does that mean?" I asked cautiously, dread pooling in my chest. "It means you have two choices," she replied, her tone deceptively calm. "Option 1. You remain aboard this vessel indefinitely, serving as, what is the human term? A consultant? In exchange for your cooperation, you'll be granted certain privileges: freedom of movement within designated areas, access to resources, protection from those who might seek to harm you." She paused, letting the offer sink in before continuing. "Option 2. You attempt escape, which will inevitably lead to recapture or worse. Choose wisely." The weight of her ultimatum pressed down on me like a physical force. On one hand, staying aboard the ship offered a chance at survival, albeit under strict conditions. On the other, attempting escape seemed suicidal given the overwhelming odds stacked against me. Yet the thought of surrendering my autonomy, even temporarily, felt equally suffocating. "I need time to think," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Silra nodded, unsurprised. "You have until morning," she said, rising gracefully from her seat. "In the meantime, consider this: trust is earned, not given freely. If you wish to survive among the Kalari, you must prove yourself worthy of it." With that, she turned and strode toward a side door, disappearing into another section of her quarters. Left alone in the cavernous chamber, I slumped back in my chair, overwhelmed by the gravity of my predicament. The stars outside the viewport seemed impossibly distant, mocking me with their unreachable brilliance. For the first time since arriving, I allowed myself to fully acknowledge the truth. I was trapped, not just physically but emotionally. And somehow, inexplicably, Silra held the key to both my freedom and my fate. The hours dragged on, each one stretching into what felt like an eternity. Sleep eluded me entirely, my mind racing with impossible scenarios and half-formed plans. By the time dawn, or what passed for dawn aboard the Kalari vessel, broke, I still hadn't come to a decision. The prospect of remaining aboard the ship filled me with unease. Yet the alternative seemed even bleaker. Escape would likely mean death, either at the hands of the Kalari or the unforgiving void of space. Staying, however, meant submitting to their rules, their scrutiny, their judgment. Neither option felt like true freedom. When Silra reappeared, she wasted no time with pleasantries. "Your answer?" she asked bluntly, her glowing eyes boring into mine as though she could read my hesitation. "I'll stay," I said finally, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "But not because I trust you, because I don't have a choice." Her lips curved into a faint smile, though it lacked warmth. "Wise decision," she replied, circling around the desk to stand closer. "Though trust isn't required, not yet. Compliance will suffice." Before I could respond, the doors to her quarters slid open, admitting a trio of guards who marched in with mechanical precision. At their center was a wiry figure clad in shimmering robes that seemed to ripple like liquid metal. His face was obscured by a mask etched with glowing runes similar to those on Silra's armor, giving him an almost spectral appearance. He stopped a few paces away, inclining his head slightly in deference to Silra. "Commander," he said, his voice smooth and melodic, devoid of emotion. "The council requires your presence." Immediately, Silra's expression hardened, her glowing eyes narrowing imperceptibly. "Can it wait?" she asked, her tone clipped. "They insist," the robed figure replied, his tone betraying no hint of apology. "There are developments regarding the human incursion. Matters that demand urgent attention." For a moment, Silra simply stared at him, her jaw tightening ever so slightly. Then, with a resigned sigh, she turned back to me. "Stay here," she ordered, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Guard him," she added, addressing the nearest soldier before striding toward the door. The robed figure fell into step beside her, their footsteps echoing faintly as they disappeared down the corridor. Left alone with the guards, I sank back into the chair, my thoughts spiraling once again. Developments? What kind of developments? Were they talking about my team? Had the others been captured, or worse? The uncertainty gnawed at me, making it impossible to focus on anything else. Time passed in agonizing increments, marked only by the subtle shifts in light filtering through the viewport. Just when I thought I might lose my mind waiting, the doors slid open again, revealing Silra. But something was different this time. Gone was the composed, commanding demeanor she usually exuded. Her armor bore scorch marks, and her normally pristine golden skin was streaked with faint smudges of ash. Her glowing eyes burned brighter than ever, filled with a mixture of fury and resolve. "They know," she said flatly, striding toward me with purposeful steps. "About the ruins, about Earth, about everything." My blood ran cold. "How? One of your teammates," she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. "Captured and interrogated. Weak-willed humans always crack under pressure." "Who?" I demanded, rising to my feet. "Which one?" Her expression softened infinitesimally, though her tone remained harsh. "Does it matter? The damage is done. The council has convened an emergency session. They're debating retaliation measures against your species." "Retaliation?" I echoed, my voice rising in panic. "You can't let them do that. We didn't mean any harm. We didn't even know you existed. And now you do," she countered sharply, grabbing my arm with surprising force. "Which makes you invaluable. Come with me." "Invaluable?" I repeated, stumbling after her as she pulled me toward the door. "What are you talking about?" "You're coming before the council," she explained tersely, dragging me into the corridor. "If anyone can convince them to spare your planet, it's you." "Me?" I sputtered, incredulous. "Why would they listen to me?" "Because you called me lovely," she said simply, glancing over her shoulder with a smirk. "And because, for reasons I can't explain, I believe you might actually succeed." With that cryptic statement ringing in my ears, we raced through the ship, heading toward a confrontation that could determine the fate of billions. The council chamber was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It stretched upward into darkness, its ceiling lost in shadow, while the walls shimmered with shifting constellations that seemed alive, pulsing faintly as if responding to the tension in the room. A massive circular table dominated the space, surrounded by towering figures clad in ornate armor and flowing robes adorned with glowing runes. Each member of the council radiated power, their eyes, some glowing like Silra's, others cold and metallic, fixated on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Silra stood at my side, her grip firm but reassuring on my arm. She had insisted on accompanying me, refusing to let anyone else take charge of what she called this precarious negotiation. Her presence was both a comfort and a source of added pressure. Every step we took toward the center of the chamber felt heavier than the last. Commander Silra, one of the council members, intoned, his voice resonating through the vast space. His form was imposing even among these giants, his armor etched with intricate patterns that pulsed with a deep crimson light. You bring this human before us. Explain yourself. Silra straightened, releasing my arm to step forward. Her voice rang out clear and commanding, silencing the murmurs that had begun to ripple through the chamber. Esteemed council, I present Alex Carter not as a prisoner or a threat, but as a representative of humanity. He carries knowledge of his species' intentions and desires peace, not conflict. Murmurs erupted again, louder this time, laced with skepticism and disdain. Another council member, a woman whose skin shimmered like liquid silver, leaned forward, her glowing eyes narrowing. Peace? After trespassing on sacred Kalari territory? After desecrating our ruins and endangering secrets millennia old? I didn't know. I blurted out before I could stop myself. Every eye turned to me, and for a moment, I regretted speaking up. But then I remembered Silra's words. If anyone can convince them, it's you. Taking a shaky breath, I stepped forward, meeting the council's piercing gazes head-on. We didn't mean harm, I said, my voice steadier now. We're explorers, scientists. We seek understanding, not conquest. If we'd known your empire existed, if we'd understood the significance of those ruins, we would never have gone near them. Please believe me when I say Earth doesn't want war. We just want to learn. Silence fell over the chamber, heavy and suffocating. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Then the crimson-armored figure spoke again, his tone icy. And how do we know this is true? Humans are notorious for deception. Your kind has waged countless wars against itself. What assurance do we have that you won't turn your weapons on us next? Before I could respond, Silra stepped forward once more, placing herself between me and the council. Her golden form gleamed under the dim light, her glowing eyes blazing with determination. Because I vouch for him, she declared, her voice unwavering. Alex Carter is no ordinary human. He has shown respect where others would show arrogance. He has sought dialogue where others would resort to violence. And he has earned my trust. A rare thing indeed. Gasps rippled through the chamber, followed by hushed whispers. Clearly, such a declaration from Silra carried weight. The council members shifted uneasily, their glowing eyes flickering as they debated silently among themselves. Finally, the silver-skinned woman rose from her seat, her movements fluid yet deliberate. Very well, she said, her voice carrying finality. If Commander Silra believes this human speaks truthfully, then we shall grant Earth a chance. But let it be known, any further incursions into Kalari territory will result in immediate retaliation. Humanity must prove itself worthy of coexistence. Relief washed over me so strongly that my knees nearly buckled. Beside me, Silra exhaled softly, her shoulders relaxing ever so slightly. For the first time since stepping into the chamber, I allowed myself to hope. In the weeks that followed, life aboard the Kalari vessel became less about confinement and more about collaboration. Silra introduced me to key members of her crew, teaching me snippets of their language and customs while encouraging me to share stories of Earth. Slowly but surely, a fragile bond began to form, not just between us, but between our two species. Diplomatic envoys were dispatched to Earth, paving the way for tentative alliances and cultural exchanges. Through it all, Silra remained by my side, her presence a constant source of strength and inspiration. Our initial encounters had been fraught with tension and misunderstanding, but over time, something deeper blossomed between us. Perhaps it was mutual respect, perhaps it was admiration, or perhaps it was simply the undeniable connection forged during moments of crisis. Whatever it was, it grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, as we stood together on the observation deck gazing at the stars, Silra turned to me, her glowing eyes soft with emotion. "You've changed everything, Alex," she said quietly. "Not just for me, but for my people. For yours." "And you've changed me," I replied, reaching out to take her hand. Her skin was warm beneath my touch, impossibly smooth and radiant. "I never thought I'd find someone like you." Her lips curved into a smile, the corners of her eyes crinkling faintly. "Someone like me? An alien commander who blushes at being called lovely?" I chuckled, squeezing her hand gently. "Exactly." For a long while we simply stood there, watching the cosmos stretch endlessly before us. When she finally spoke again, her voice was hesitant, almost shy, a stark contrast to the confident leader I'd come to admire. "Alex, would you consider staying with me?" My heart skipped a beat. "Do you mean here? On your ship?" She shook her head, her expression growing serious. "No, somewhere else. A place where neither humans nor Kalari hold dominion. A neutral ground where we can build something new, together." It wasn't a question I expected to hear, nor one I could answer lightly. But as I looked into her glowing eyes, I realized the choice had already been made. Not with logic, but with my heart. "Yes," I said softly, smiling despite the enormity of the decision. "Let's do it." Years later, we found ourselves living in a secluded paradise nestled within a distant nebula. The air shimmered with hues of lavender and gold, and twin suns bathed the landscape in perpetual twilight. Our home was modest yet beautiful, built using technology from both our worlds. Around us, laughter echoed, the joyful sounds of children playing, their forms a blend of human and Kalari traits. Silra and I often sat outside, watching our little ones chase fireflies that danced lazily in the cool breeze. Sometimes, she'd reach over to hold my hand, her glowing eyes filled with contentment. Other times, she'd tease me about that fateful day when I called her lovely, by mistake, her laughter ringing like music. Life wasn't without its challenges, of course. Bridging two vastly different cultures required patience, compromise, and endless communication. But through it all, we faced every obstacle side by side, united by love and shared purpose. As I watched Silra play with our youngest child, a girl with golden skin and wide, curious eyes, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. From strangers bound by mistrust to partners building a future together. Ours was a story written in starlight and hope. And though the universe beyond our sanctuary remained vast and unpredictable, I knew one thing for certain. Wherever Silra was, I was home.